Summertime. Summer, in the minds of most of us, begins with Memorial Day and ends with Labor Day, with a nod to Flag Day in June and a great celebration of Independence Day in July. Too often, though, we hear speeches about the Founding Fathers with very little attention to the Founding Mothers, without whom history would end in a single generation. Memorial Day is just around the corner, and it is worthwhile to note that unheralded women were almost entirely responsible for beginning this annual holiday. Its origin was the Civil War. Until recently, May 30th focused on the terrible war between the states that, at tremendous human cost, ended slavery. The late spring date was chosen because flowers would be in bloom all across the nation, which enabled everyone to join in what is still sometimes called Decoration Day. Flowers, usually grown by women, were central to Memorial Day ceremonies. They served as reminders of eternal hope and new beginnings. Unfortunately, though, in our modern-day observances of Memorial Day, we often forget the holiday's origins. The public often confuses Memorial Day with November's Veterans Day, and its Civil War message is lost. It should be remembered, though, and women's roles in creating it especially merits recognition. As from time immemorial, women cleaned up the mess. They took the gruesome reality of approximately 500,000 dead men, and by promoting cemeteries, led the way in turning blood and gore into something that encouraged serenity and reflection. Usually named some variant of Women's Relief Society, groups sprang up in both the North and South that not only memorialized the dead, but also cared for the war's disabled and its widows and orphans. In a time prior to today's well-organized Pentagon, women also ran countless soldiers' homes. Some were temporary, offering respite to men who walked hundreds of miles home from duty, while other soldiers' homes proved permanent residences for the war's disabled. Perhaps the earliest unacknowledged leader in this movement was Ellen Call Long of Tallahassee, Florida. Her father had been governor when Florida was still a territory and opposed secession from the Union. She did too, but the voices of women and elderly men were ignored when it became the third state to secede, 2 months prior to Lincoln's inauguration, and by a vote of 62-7. Former Governor Richard Keith Call died of natural causes during the war, and wartime Governor John Milton killed himself when he saw the consequences of the conflict that he had so thoughtlessly encouraged. Ellen Call Long, however, was there to lead when the fighting ended in April of 1865. Just weeks later, she organized a Women's Memorial Society to reconcile embittered enemies. On June 22, 1865, women adopted these profound, forgiving, and future-oriented resolutions, a much better analysis of the crisis than anything that came from men. The document read,
"The object of this meeting is to initiate a memorial association that shall perpetuate in an honorable manner the memory of the gallant dead. Our purpose is to reclaim from oblivion and defamation the memory and graves of those who, right or wrong, stood by their country's cause, firmly believing that posterity will acknowledge we did our duty. In no invidious spirit do we come. The political storm that shook our country to its foundation, we hope, is past. We are done with the Confederate cause and are willing to do all that women can do to stem the tide of bitterness and angry feelings. We will practice and teach forbearance and patience, which will finally bring peace and justice. The society shall not be ephemeral in its character, but a permanent institution, establishing an anniversary memorial observances, the object of which will be to renew and ornament the graves of soldiers, whether strangers or our own sons. This society proposes, moreover, to make a provision for the education of as many children of deceased soldiers as may be compatible with the means of said association. The memories of the past are written in blood and cannot be effaced, but go forward we must, crushed, oppressed, and heartsick, yet we shall not forget.
But most of us have forgotten. We also have forgotten to create a national holiday on August 26th, the anniversary of our own right to vote. In fact, with the exception of Mother's Day, which is on a Sunday, there are no American holidays that honor women. Even a casual glance around our nation's capital reveals dozens of men on horses who fought a war, but there are almost none to the women who also contributed to victories, or who simply stayed at home, ran farms and businesses, reared the next generation, and worked to bring peace. In the same national capital, filled with museums, there are none for the totality of the experience of American women. That is why the National Women's History Museum needs you. Please emulate Ellen Call Long and others who understood that the past is an essential prologue to the future. Support us, right here, right now.